Welcome into an inaugural episode of Implicit Bias. And by inaugural, I don't mean it's our first episode. What I actually mean is it's a show after an inauguration. Our inaugural episode would actually be the first episode of this show, which you know isn't because we've been around for a number of years, which, by the way, also is not the first annual. No such thing. Rabbit hole we'll talk about later. I am your host, Kevon Bordelon. This is the first Implicit Bias Radio after the inauguration of the 47th President of the United States. And yes, we are still solving the problems of the world one or two or three weekly whiskeys at a time. We are still diving into the stories that you may or may not have heard about in the news. We are still having more fun than we should be allowed to have in the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast lair. That's the TSPL for the uninitiated. So it was very, very interesting during the inauguration that we actually got two full-on inaugural addresses. Not officially, but we might as well have. There was one in the actual rotunda that was pretty dignified. It was pretty straightforward and pretty much what you would expect in an inaugural address. Maybe, as some people have described it, a little more State of the Union than others. But the reality was, it wasn't far off from what you would expect from someone who is graced with the position of what many call the most powerful man in the world. Then we got the second one. The second one, well, if you're on that side of the aisle, it was a heck of a lot more fun. That's the one where we started to get all the dirt. That's the one where we started to maybe get the haze of professionalism removed. Maybe we got the veil of politeness lifted up and we got to actually see the true face of the bride. And what it dawned on us was this. Doesn't matter if your favorite politicians have a D or an R behind their name, or maybe even an I for independent. Doesn't matter if it's your best friend. Doesn't matter if it's your worst enemy. For some of us, it doesn't matter if it's the person that you live with consistently every single day. But the truth is this, is that what we get from people, especially politicians, when the cameras are rolling, much like you see right now, it's never who they actually are. And I don't mean never. I mean never who they actually are. Now, what do I mean by that? Every politician in the United States of America, in modern society, we pretty much know, well, they are giving us something that is prepared for television. It's a made-for-TV movie. That's all it is. We never get to see what's actually going on. I mean, think about the last 4 years. We've been told consistently, sharp as a tack, on point. And the reality is, not so much. That sucked. Can we throw an edit in there? Okay, perfect. So the reality is, not so much. The reality is, what we get is what all too often they want us to see, or sometimes what they can show us. Now, what do I mean by that? Think about it this way. For those Catholics out there who say rosaries, those Christians who know the story, the Transfiguration meant that not even Jesus could show everyone who and what he actually was. Only a very small, select group of people got to see that, and he actually swore them to secrecy. If you think the same thing doesn't happen in politics, but at a much greater level, and also at potentially a much more evil level, well, we're probably all very sadly mistaken. So yes, this is an inaugural edition of Implicit Bias. We have gotten to see maybe what's behind the curtain just a bit, because we did get not one, but two addresses. The key is know what you're dealing with. And for those of us who much rather the devil that we know as opposed to the devil that comes to us with a nice smiling face, well, that's maybe the big takeaway. See, politicians, especially in the US, have done their best for decades to make sure that what they did show you was palatable, maybe even likable. After all, the devil's not going to show up and tell you, I'm the devil, I'm here to steal your soul. The devil's going to show up and say, I'm nice, I'm polite, I'm likable. And then, when you're not looking, he's going to pardon more people than every other president in history combined. When you're not looking, he's going to make sure that he pardons every member of his family. Those devils, those are the ones you got to worry about the most. And those devils live on both sides of the aisle. Because if it's pardons or handouts or pork barrel projects, it's all the same. They're all trying to show you what they think you want, as opposed to the one thing that we look for consistently here on Implicit Bias, and it's the truth. Which brings us back to that old premise that we talk about often on this show, but sometimes we don't say it enough. And that premise is this: believe none of what they say, believe only what they do. So we've got a track record over what was done in the last 4 years. We've got a track record as to what was done 4 years before that. And now we're going to have to see if that aligns with what's about to happen in the 4 years headed our way. And that might be, hopefully, what's aligned with your implicit bias. Now, we are going to continue to solve the problems of the world one weekly whiskey at a time. This week, well, if it's an inaugural episode of Implicit Bias, it's only fitting that we have the presidential dram as part of our weekly whiskey. It's only fitting that we sample maybe more than one. Maybe we'll see if the crew in the TSPL can sample 47 of them. I doubt that happens. But you never know with some of the people sitting at the bar. And there's the bell, which tells me that it's time to go. Not for the show, but it's time to bring in the rest of the crew. It's time to sample our weekly whiskey to let you know what we think. And it's time for us to get you ready for 2 hours of Implicit Bias Radio. The presidential dram on an inaugural episode of Implicit Bias. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. And man, do we have a motley crew here for you. And I don't mean like Vince Neil, Tommy Lee, no, Mick Mark, no, not that group. I mean potentially worse. What we have for you in the top secret podcast layer this week, and somebody's going to have to take the damn bell away from Ritter already. He's at the bar.
You put it in front of me and Brian, it's going to get hit. Sorry.
Yikes. That is Lee Ritter. And I'm trying to remember what nickname we came up for you, and I don't remember at this point. So I think we're going to scratch it, because if I don't remember it, it's not done
stick.
well enough. Well, we might call you like the instigator or something like that. Maybe we'll just call you Butthead. I don't. Maybe you're Beavis. I don't know.
No, thank you.
Yeah, well,
we got Triple H here, so it's good.
Triple H is there. Well, if he would be Triple H, I guess that would make you like X-Pac.
I didn't watch wrestling.
Yeah, just go watch. You'll understand. Or maybe it would make you China. I don't know. So the other person at the bar is Triple H, Hold Harmless Harmon. Brian Harmon of Dupree Carrier Gotcha. No, you don't just get to point. Remember, this is also an audible show. Like, you have to be able to hear it. Harmon, you going to talk at all?
Thank y'all for having me. No, always a pleasure to be here. Thank y'all again.
No,
I look forward to it. We always have a good time.
Yeah, we are anticipating another great time. And then in the chair like mine, the Renegade is out for this particular recording. So sitting there, I know they look exactly the same. He is the consigliere, Chris Castro. Chris, it's great to have you back.
Good to be back here, and good to be filling the chair for Caleb.
Chair
Sorry
feels
he's
a
not
little
here tonight.
different than the bar now.
Yeah, the chair does feel a little different, but quite enjoyable, and good to be here for this inaugural edition.
Yeah, it's
Glad to be enjoying a little nice whiskey on on a chilly day.
Okay, this is also like the Snowpocalypse edition. And I don't mean like the snow pack of lips. I mean the Snowpocalypse edition, as we are expected to have like, oh, what are you laughing about, Ritter?
I'm just sorry.
What do you like?
This is Brian and I's shtick. I mean, we're gonna giggle and laugh.
You got to talk into the microphone.
Well, I'm sorry. We have to
Turn it.
share, and I'm afraid
Just
Brian's
turn-
gonna
no,
come into
turn
it. And
there you go.
I know. It's one of these days. It's gonna be a good day. It's cold.
Yeah, well, and we are anticipating.
It's going to be freezing cold.
Yeah, we are anticipating anywhere between what I think at the latest 7 to 9 inches of snow in southern Lafayette, Louisiana.
I just checked while you were opening up, and it's shifting further south, is what the weather said. So where Brian and I live, we were looking at 4 to 6. Now we're looking at 3 maybe. And the I-10 corridor south looks like y'all are going to get it. Y'all are going to be ankle knee deep for sure.
It will certainly be interesting because for those who know in Louisiana, we're not equipped for this. It's not that we're not built for it. We just don't have the equipment to deal with this in southern Louisiana.
So I have a contract down in Golden Meadow with a contractor who's in Bossier. And so he said, hey, we're going to cancel work for 2 days. And he's like, rookies?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I'm like, and you're in Bossier. He's like, yeah, we get snow, 3 to 5 days out of the year. And it didn't even occur to me. I'm like, Alexandria is kind of that Cajun cutoff. They're not Cajun. They don't work in our world.
Correct. Right. And they don't understand what we get along the Gulf of America now.
Yeah, I saw that.
They do not understand what we get along the coast of the Gulf of America, where we don't deal with wintry precipitation. We just don't, because we might see it once every 3 to 5 years. And what we are expecting is truly a once in a lifetime event. I mean, they're saying this is a once in 125, 130 year event.
Yeah. It has the potential of being that. Lafayette has an average of about 1 inch of snow precipitation every 10 years. And we're looking at close to 10 inches in a given storm. So, yeah, we may have a 100 years worth of snow potentially.
I heard it goes back to 1896 when the last time that Lafayette got about a foot of snow, which is, I mean, it's anticipated between 7 to 10 something inches.
Yeah.
That was as of yesterday. I haven't heard today's news, but it's going to be chilly and unusual, and I think that we're equipped.
So is it global warming?
I knew that was coming.
I'm teeing you up. Is it global warming? Is it? What is it?
No, it is the cyclical climatological nature of the planet. That's what it is. I mean, you just had a major eruption in Japan from a volcano that just spewed, according to some reports, more chlorofluorocarbons and more carbon dioxide than humans have contributed to the atmosphere in like the last 100 years combined. It's something that is just nuts, and yet we're to blame for carbon dioxide. I'm not saying pollutants. We need to take care of the planet. Whole different conversation. But carbon dioxide, and we got to get to the whiskey, so go ahead and...
No, it's good. It was just another nickel comment. No big deal.
Well,
I know.
Ritter, there is no comment from you that is a nickel. I've never seen one get above a penny and a half. Right, anyway, let's dive into our weekly whiskey, and it's only fitting that we chime in an inaugural episode of Implicit Bias with a bottle of the Presidential Dram. So this comes from Proof and Wood. This is the old MGP product. This is a 4-year-old, and I believe this is a rye. It's a barrel proof, and it is. It's a straight rye whiskey, 4 years old, at 119.58 proof. In other words, 59.79% alcohol by volume. So let's start at the bar. Why not? Unfortunately, we have to, and Ritter's there. So he's keeping the book, though. So Ritter is taking over for the Rustic Renegade in that level and that capacity for this particular episode.
So everyone knows I was entrusted with the book immediately upon arrival. So the pick of getting the book was bestowed upon me today by on high. So I feel good enough that I wrote legibly in here. I looked at the last couple half dozen entries or so. I can absolutely say without a doubt you'll be able to read 95% of my writing versus the 5% I can read previous.
Fair enough.
So we're in good shape there for sure.
Now, this Presidential Dram is actually a pick from Nunu's Market in Lafayette, Louisiana. That's our Lafayette Market weekly whiskey partner. So this is one you can only get there. And it just hit the shelves a couple days ago. And again, whenever you get a pick, it's going to be proprietary to that store. It's unobtainium because when it's gone, it's gone. It's Kaiser Soze. Just, it disappears.
And this is a 4-year, so it should have the upper end of the bottle allotment versus something in a 6 to 8 or 10. So maybe there'll be another dozen or two out there than would normally be in like an 8 to 10 year. So folks, run fast. You don't have to run hard and fast.
And when Ritter says the upper allotment, he means the actual numbers of bottles that are available. Because if you're going for the 8 to 10 year, you lose that angel share and you just don't get the yield out of that particular pick. So let's start with you, Chris, with regards to kind of what you think. As I see, you are already done with your initial sample. I mean, you seem to like this one.
Well, I can tell you that I'm about done, not quite done.
Okay.
And when Lee says he was bestowed to him on high, I think he meant to say on rye, because that's what you're talking about here.
Well played. Ring the bell. Yes.
And, I think everybody might know, but I consider myself a newbie to the bourbon and the whiskey game. But I have come to enjoy it since participating on the show. And much like the bottle, it's what would you call that? Wax. Is that the seal?
It's just a wax seal at the top. Yep.
The wax seal being blue, I would call it a blue because it is at the alcohol level of the 59.79 and the proof of almost essentially 120.
So what makes it a blue for you?
It is the first tasting of it. Had a little bite. I had to clear my throat a little bit, kind of like as you started out your show here a little bit. But as we've come through this glass and we're getting down to the last few little portions here, and we're not quite done, but it is substantially sweeter and smoother and much easier than that first kickstart. Let's say the kickstart gets you going, and it sets the tone in your mouth. And then after that, it's quite nice and easy. And I wouldn't think at 100, for 120 proof, I wouldn't expect it, except for that first kick. After that, it slows down a lot. And, and looking at it in the glass, it got a nice body, some nice legs to it.
Yep.
Good color as far as the caramel color. Taste, I find some cinnamon type flavor to it, kind of dessert flavor, maybe a little bit slightly as far as whiskeys go.
Yeah.
I still have some problems with identifying flavors a lot.
No, that's okay. But it's a blue for you right out of the gate.
It is. I mean, the wax seal is blue. We got a red president, but we got a blue one,
a blue whiskey. All right. So let's go to the bar. We'll start with Hold Harmless Harmon, Triple H at the bar.
The first thing that stuck out to me was how thick it is in the glass. I noticed immediately it hugs the rim of the glass. Is that viscosity? Is that the right?
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
That was unusual to me. That was the first thing I noticed. I was surprised to see it's only a 4-year after tasting it. And as far as 119 proof, it drinks very smooth. That was the second thing that I did notice is how well it went down. It wasn't much of a burn on the back end, and I'm going to give it high praise further in the show too. I really enjoy this one. I've got nothing but good things to say about it.
Really? Okay, nothing but good things. I like that. All right, Ritter, what are you getting off of this one? What are the notes that you're pulling out of there as you break the microphone?
I'm going to wreck some equipment here.
We'll leave that for right now, Brian. It'll be all right. We'll get it in the break.
Well, second time something's dropped at your legs in the show. This is good. It's got good spice, good color to it. Everybody said it has good legs, which I can definitely agree. A nice body for 4 years. This thing holds really good. It's not thin. It's not weak. It's playing like it's been an 8-year president. It has a lot of experience in this 4-year bottle.
Ring the bell for him, Brian, because that's a real big takeaway on this. When I saw the bottle and saw 4-year, I went, that because usually a rye you want 6 years at a minimum. That's kind of that sweet spot. But oh my goodness, if you'd have told me that this was just a rye and asked me to guess the age without seeing it on the bottle, I would have probably said 6 to 8.
Yeah. Well, for a good thing to say about this is this dram does come in an 8-year also.
Yes.
And this one somehow maybe it missed a term. And it's filling in, right? And
there was a pause.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why we're drinking this one tonight, and it's special. And as a store pick, this is something that for me, I know Brian didn't give his selection yet, but this is going to be a blue for me. And I don't really hand out blues too often. This is going to be one that I am going to go get. I'm glad Caleb is not here because we're going to have more to enjoy today.
Yes.
We're going to have to save him a sip because if he was here, we'd be way down on this bottle. But for me, this is definitely a blue. I'm very happy with it. I have a bunch of these from Proof and Wood, and I'm enjoying this. It has a little bit of spice, but I didn't get the kick right at the beginning. I get it on the back, which is okay, which is fine. And maybe I got not the first pour or two out of it. Maybe I got one of those little later ones, but this is an enjoyable drink. This will be one that if I have is going to go fast.
So couple of things on this one, and we've touched on these as we've gone around the TSPL. Number one, I got spice right out of the gate, and that spice wasn't too much. It wasn't too little. It was kind of the Goldilocks zone on spice. It was just enough, but not too much to make you go, oh, it's too much of a burn.
It didn't taste young.
No, it does not taste young at all. So I got that spice, and then I immediately got the sweetness. I got that sweet, light caramel. And I've used this before on the show. This is the flan caramel flavor that I get. So if you've ever had caramel custard, you've had flan, that layer of caramel at the top and that very light, very liquidy caramel sauce that comes with it, that's what this reminds me of on the middle of the palate. The back end of the palate, you get a little of the alcohol up through the nostrils, and you get that long finish where you start to just get a little bit more of that cinnamon, that vanilla, and it really sits incredibly beautifully on the palate. And it just makes you want more.
This would be one of those that, I don't know exactly when we're going to have this one up on air, but the next cold snap, you're going to want this one on the back patio. This one is going to be one of those right next to you with a nice mild to moderate cigar. I know Renee can recommend something at some point, but that right there, back on each other, I'd go puff, sip, puff, sip. It would be one of those that, for me, I would have about an hour and a half outside and be well deep into that bottle.
This one gives you that warmth in the chest that you want. And here's what I really, really like about this one. This is that one where you've got somebody who says, I'm not a rye drinker. I don't drink rye. I don't like rye. This is one that you pour for them and you don't tell them it's a rye. This is one where you say, man, I'm just going to put a little of that presidential dram in there for them, and I'm going to let them taste it. And when they taste it, go, oh my goodness, this is delicious. If you didn't know, you'd probably think this is a ridiculously high-end bourbon. This is an off-the-charts bourbon. This is one of those that is unobtainium, hard to find. This, to me, almost hits that flavor profile of the high-end Buffalo Trace stuff.
It gets close, that's for sure. I mean,
it's very close.
It's up there. So what is your color here?
Oh, what I mean, as I've given you the description,
okay,
where do you think this lies? This is absolutely going to find itself in deep blue, the Implicit Bias Infinity bottle sitting in front of you right there, Ritter.
Triple H didn't even give us his color, but
yeah, he did. He said it was a blue.
We usually I thought we were going to give our color.
We usually do, but we kind of ended up out of turn.
No,
it's all right.
I'm giving it a blue. I'm with y'all. I say it's a blue. In fact, I'm thinking about my next trip to Lafayette when I can pick up a bottle. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, this is an off the chart, absolute blue. And what I will tell you is this: if you are watching this show somewhere other than Lafayette, Louisiana, if you're listening to us on podcasts somewhere outside of Southern Louisiana, the presidential dram. And I'm going to tell a story about this that fits in here. I don't know how much time we got left in this segment, but okay, 2 to 3 minutes, we're good. So I'm going to tell this story. I was actually in Lake Forest a couple weeks ago, right outside of Chicago. Big work thing, had a buddy of mine who's getting into bourbon, and he says, we're in this particular store up there. It's called Golden Eagle Wine and Spirits. They're a great place to go if you're up in a little town called Libertyville. And he says, look, Kevon, I'm looking for a bottle that I'd like to maybe make an old-fashioned out of it. I might want to drink it neat. I'm thinking I could spend $70 to $100. And we happen to walk through the store. They had their store pick of the presidential dram on sale for $49. Wow. I picked it up and I said, go with this. And I'd already had a bottle months ago, but it was just sitting on their shelves. And he texted me. So Phil LaBoche, I know how much you enjoy the presidential dram. Tell people if they get to find this, it's a blue all the way around. This one, though, this is a special pick. Ritter?
Well, last time I was here, we had was it the senator and the
Yep.
representative, I believe. So
Yep.
I've made all three, so far. We just need to find that good old judicial here, and we'll be in good shape.
I've got a bottle of the cabinet on my bar. I just haven't quite opened it yet.
But proof and wood, let's just say that's what needs to be said. And,
Yep.
and I think turn the bottle around at some point during the show and you can
Yeah,
show
we
the
will.
label. How do we people can see that symbol? That proof and wood is where you want to go. That's kind of that little standard bearer from MGP in Indiana
Yep.
for this brand.
Absolutely. So it's a blue. We'll tell you what would you pay when we come back as we continue more of Implicit Bias Radio right after this. Implicit Bias inaugurated in full. Yes, we are. And I don't mean like our first episode, like I told you. I mean, we actually have the Presidential Dram as our weekly whiskey this week, available as a pick from New News. This particular bottle we are sampling only available in Youngsville, Louisiana. Actually, it might be available at all their locations, but Lafayette, Louisiana, Central, as is the Mr. Lester's TSPL, the top secret podcast layer. I'm Kevon Bordelon. The crew that we've got here this week has voted it a unanimous blue. And let me show you who's at the bar. We've got Lee Ritter of Ritter Consulting Engineers. We've got Brian Harmon of Dupree Carrier Godchaw. And of course, we have the consigliere, Chris Castro of Castro Law in the chair, much like mine. So the one thing we didn't get to do, fellas, was play What Would You Pay, which is a tradition on this show where we basically see who can get closest to the price with a guess, or if we would in fact actually pay way more or way less than what the bottle actually costs. So let's start with Mr. Castro. Mr. Castro, what would you pay for this bottle of the Presidential Dram?
I would pay $60 for that.
$60 is your guess. Let's go to the bar. Gents, do you think that this or the liquid that's in this is 60, more, less? What?
I'm going to go with, I'll do 70. I think it's a $70 bottle.
You think it's 70 as by what's in there? Okay. So Ritter, who is taking notes for us in the Implicit Bias Whiskey Tasting Journal.
This being a store pick and something that I have an idea of what it goes for normally, but bought a few of these, but not store pick. I'm going to go $79.
$79 on this Presidential Dram 4-year straight rye whiskey at 119 and change on the proof. Gents, y'all ready to be upset? Because we normally have the What Would You Pay championship belt chain presented by Box Drop of Lafayette, but it's in the shop because it's getting an upgrade, which is going to be really cool. So I know that you're going to be upset about that.
Get a little bling.
Yep. Got to have a little more.
Is
bling.
it getting a little lighter?
No, it's not getting any lighter. Yeah, it is not getting any lighter. But this is a $49.99 bottle of whiskey.
Ooh,
Yeah.
49.
That makes Castro on.
You gave it away in your story from earlier.
How did I give it away in my story from earlier?
You were talking about a store pick $49.
Yeah, you did.
Okay,
say something
but I
about
said it was on sale up there for $49.
Those are
Wow.
hints and innuendos.
It is.
But this, no, I had to have Ritter give me the receipt so I could look at it during the break because I didn't remember. I mean, normally, Ritter, this is, and you know this because you've bought them, I've seen this bottle as high as $79, $89, $99.
Well, that's where I was at, 79. I mean, I've seen them. I think I took a picture in the store not too long ago. I was at a local grocer and they have a bunch of them. And I was like, oh, send it to Caleb. Caleb's like, oh my God. And it was just normal stuff. And it was, in that $64 to $79, $84 range. I was like, okay, store pick.
Y'all,
This is going to fly.
and this is getting,
This is going to be good.
this is getting on my second pour even better than the
Yes.
initial pour.
I
It has
agree.
settled just a bit. It's had a chance to breathe. Man,
It's going to be dangerous.
yeah, don't miss this bottle because this is one that you could give to a bourbon drinker who says, I don't drink rye. You could give it to a rye drinker who is like, yeah, I prefer rye more than bourbon, and they're going to love it. You could give this to somebody who is relatively new to whiskey
That's me.
and tell them, see, high proof whiskey doesn't have to light your head on fire.
So I'm in a chat group with a bunch of guys across the country.
Oh, we don't need to know about that. We don't want the
whiskey
feds
and
coming in here
cigars.
and raiding computers and all that
they,
stuff.
They can read everything they want. I promise you. It's a bunch of guys talking about cigars and bourbon. And one of these guys is asking about what's a good introductory whiskey, and it didn't even dawn on me to give him proof. I did Pinhook, I did Penelope, those awesome picks. They're all. He's like, he's got a real whiskey guy across the street, and he's like, I need like $100 bottle. And I was like, man, Penelope and all these other
Yeah.
things, like, you're in $60, $80 range and you're going to do all right. I didn't even think proof and wood. I whiffed.
And you completely, now looking back, are like, man, I wish I could have given him this one.
Well, I mean, even just to recommend these, they're so under the radar. It's like you almost want to keep them at your own house.
This is that bottle that at $50, people are out there trying to find what should be a $45 bottle of whiskey, and they're paying $250 for it.
Yep.
I would not touch those secondary market bottles when this is available. It's just that simple.
Uh-huh. Is this, you had talked about it a little bit earlier, but this would go well with a mixed drink, like an old fashioned or some other
Oh,
kind
my
of.
good. If you made an old fashioned with this, oh,
I
What?
would do a smoked old fashioned with this.
Uh-huh.
actually, you know what I would do with this? Especially considering it's a straight rye whiskey, I'd do a Sazerac with
That's
this.
what I was about to say. I was about to say, oh, a good Sazerac.
A Sazerac. I'm gonna give a shout out to my buddy Alex Saison, his Sirop de Claire with this, with a twist of lemon. You get that herb saint in there in the glass. I mean, just it would smell like a lemon bomb with the whiskey. Fan freaking tastic is what this would do in a cocktail.
So Brian's coming over to watch national championship game, just so everybody knows tonight.
Yeah, no, thanks. We did not need to know your social agenda.
It's okay. Well, I do have one of these. We will give that a run tonight. I have all set ingredients, and I just pointed to him and was like, tonight.
Yeah, this is special. I really like this one. Speaking of special, let's go ahead because this is a special episode. It's an inaugural episode of Implicit Bias because we recorded this episode on the day of the inauguration of the 47th president of the United States. So let's start here. Let's start with your thoughts on what happened on Inauguration Day, because man, talk about a news-filled day. Chris, why don't we start with you? Because I don't know where you're going to kind of land on what the comments were, the two speeches that we got, the things that happened as 46 was rolling out the door and people writing stuff and probably telling him just to sign it and him just signing it and not knowing what he was signing maybe. I don't know. Maybe he did.
I'm sure that's probably what's going on there, and and life's easier that way, I guess, in that end.
Ignorance is bliss, right?
I would think that, quite honestly, the whiskey we've been talking about metaphorically fits today. It was bottled 4 years ago. It's running from blue to red, although this is a blue topped bottle. But this bottle, it says that it's aged for at least 4 years, and I think that. I have to admit to you, I did not hear the second speech you might be talking about, but the inauguration, his acceptance speech was good. I think that, like this bottle, 8 years ago when he came into office, it was a little more biting.
Okay.
And as he came in today, much more
dignified as this whiskey?
I would say dignified in that, he has a good sense of what it's about, what needs to be done, not to say the proclamation, but what the people have asked him to do who brought him into office.
The mandate that he got in the votes.
The mandate, and I was much more impressed than I was 8 years ago. Let's just say that. And that dignification, I think, is clearly the experience that he has, and I think that this round will go a lot smoother for him because he knows the playbook.
Okay,
and this is not a first time gig for him.
So
and that 4 year layoff, I think, only helped develop him. Just like this little bottle of whiskey got better in that 4 years.
Fair enough, Ritter.
Chris, that was going to be my question to you. Do you think maybe the 4 years off?
Oh, I think
of the mold that he went in with 8 years ago, thinking what he was going to do, versus today knowing what he's going to do.
Exactly.
And having his playbook quadrupled with plays and players on the field. I mean, breaking news, Pete Hegseth was just promoted out of committee. Just having his dominoes with trusted folks versus people who have been recommended to him. Does
Right.
that it just
Okay,
feels
so
different, right?
let's-
Does it not?
and not just what you're saying. I mean, it's one of the commentators said today that his playbook, or the people that he had promoted for all the appointments, are 3 and 4 and 5 people deep. In the event that his top dog person doesn't make it, then he's ready to go with number 2, and then or whatever it may be. So the playbook that's a good analysis or a good metaphor, and he's ready to go. And
And let me jump in here while we get the microphone to Harmon as well. One of the things I think might be underappreciated is, and I love using this word because it's not a word, the strategery that might have been understood 9 years ago. And it's this. In order for him to get elected in 2016, he had to be that guy because the media was in the bag for one candidate. Social media was in the bag for one candidate. The only way that he got the attention that he needed to get to win the votes that he needed to win in the states he needed to win in 2016 was to be that guy. So everybody saw it. Then you have 2020, which I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole on this show because, again, if you honestly think that something to the tune of like 15 million people just didn't vote in this election, you're probably sadly mistaken. And I say probably, but my point is, then we get this. So now, coming into this year, you get that juxtaposition. You get that you saw what happened. You saw the last 4 years, and you've heard the media lie to you for the last 4 years about all of it. And what I loved was that we got a little more dignified. We got a little more just, this is what's going to happen, a little more matter of fact. But then in the second speech, you find out that the guy that was there in 2016, he's still there, and he's still coming. You still know what he's going to do and what's going to happen. All right, Harmon, we're going to take this from you, and then we're going to take a break, and we'll come back on this topic because this is a good topic.
Yeah, I'm just going to follow up on what y'all already said, but I saw, yes, we're seeing a much more disciplined Trump. We're seeing a much more dignified Trump, much more statesman. It was the rollout of his cabinet and the manner in which they did it, one after the next. That was all. That's just a different rollout than what we saw. And me, and this is listening to people that should know a lot more than I do. Apparently they were very surprised on election night in 2016 that he actually won and didn't have his cabinet picks selected ahead of time, and it was a very slow rollout. I mean, hell, I think the defense secretary didn't get. I think his first one.
Correct. It didn't even get confirmed.
That's right. Yeah. So off to a good start. I like the first speech that we saw in the rotunda today. That was it was what I was expecting. And then we just saw a continuation of the campaign. I mean, that was a campaign speech. But that's Trump in his element. That's what he does, and he's good at it. He's the best at it.
We are also in our element, but our element, unfortunately, has to take breaks every now and then. Aaron David, Tug is telling us, who's running audio because Walker's out for this episode, that we got to take a quick break. We're going to come back, finish up hour one of Implicit Bias Radio. If you follow us anywhere you get podcasts, don't also forget to actually see the Implicit Bias Radio crew. You can find us on X, on Insta, on Facebook, on YouTube. Like, subscribe, follow. It helps out the show to make sure that we continue your implicit bias. The crew here in the Mr. Lester's TSPL this week, we are discussing the inaugural edition of Implicit Bias Radio. That means that, yes, we are talking about the inauguration of the 47th president of the United States. So in the last segment, discussions with the crew were around kind of what we saw, what our general impressions were of not just the first speech given by Donald J. Trump, but the second speech as well, which was maybe a little more fiery. We talked about him being, and I love the word disciplined that Brian used at the end of that segment, because discipline in front of that crowd was highly evident. Why? Because when he got in front of a different crowd, he gave him a very different message. The discipline of the first one was very straightforward, very matter of fact. The second one was a little more fiery, a little more reminiscent of, as you said, Brian, his campaign. But it also signifies, this is what I told you I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to attempt to do. And here's why I think he'll actually get it done and why you saw that discipline. You know, we talked about in the first term, maybe he had to be that guy. And Brian, you brought up a great point that most of his appointees, he didn't have them picked out. Whereas this time, I mean, we're hours after, and we're talking, some reports would say that he was going to sign as many as 200 executive orders on day one, that his candidates were already rolling through the confirmation process, and he had backup after backup after backup. he's able to do that this time because in the first term, he had to figure something out. And thank you, Joe Biden. And I mean this. Thank you. Because you have shown us, every single person in the government, I say every major player in the federal government who are not loyal to the people of the United States. And you did it by issuing blanket pardons to all of them for things that they have not even been accused of yet. And that's what Trump had to fight. The opposition was so ingrained. I mean, think about it. Obama got into office. He had 8 years and he weeded out something like 80% of the generals in the military to get the generals he wanted. Generals who would not be necessarily adhesive to the Constitution. They would be loyal to Obama. And now what we are seeing is that a lot of that got rooted out. A lot of that has been exposed, even down to, and I loved it, that the director of the TSA within hours of the inauguration had already been fired. They are going through and just heads are on the block. They're making changes, and I think change is needed.
So they have a booklet of pink slips, and they're handing them out like hall passes? Is that what's happening?
That's what it sounds like. I mean, it sounds like they're getting, turns on the town bicycle. I mean, that's what this looks like because everybody's getting around. And I loved it. What was that for? Oh, you like that metaphor, Ritter? You like that one? Okay, thank you. So this is why I have to now ask the pardons. I mean, literally less than 20 minutes before the inauguration was set to start, the official ceremony was set to start.
So I asked this question to Brian while we were waiting before you got here smoking cigars.
Sure.
Does there need to be one challenge to it? Yes. What kind of challenge does that need to be? And I'm so glad we have Chris here. Maybe he could help us.
The consigliere's here. I don't know if he knows.
But it's like, do you have the Supreme Court justice review it and say, hey, this is constitutional or not? I mean, there's got to be something because this thing is carte blanche. It's not even, Fauci back to 2014.
You pulled that one right. I was just going
saw you
there.
I was like, oh man. But there's, and in the family members, like you said, 20 minutes before, like that was set up. They had tea, he left. They said, slide the paper. It's ridiculous.
Let's go to Consigliere and see what he thinks. I don't even know if you know, because it's constitutional law.
I really don't.
It's a specialty.
I don't have a big issue, a big opinion about that, other than to say that I think it goes back to some rhetoric that President Trump had mentioned during his campaign that I'm going to go after all of these people, and so I think it was something along those lines, and whether or not these people did right things or wrong things, or things
okay,
that would
there's the big question.
The things that would be pardonable, or whether or not they arose to any kind of crime, quote unquote.
So here's the big question I have, and this is the question no one in the media has asked. So I'm going to ask it.
Okay.
What if they're fucking guilty? What if they did it?
Okay.
I mean, that's the whole point. Just to say, look, they came after me and it was against the law, and the media has branded this as retribution. He's got an axe to grind. Maybe they freaking did it.
If they did it, then the president has the right to
have
the pardon, extended. But I guess the question is whether or not people who are not, under the accusation or the allegation of a crime are being pardoned. So it's a carte blanche pardon. I think that it was more so that I've heard that I'm going to be the target, so I'm going to take you off of the, off of the list. So
is that
I kind of also would, not to interrupt, but it's just that I get the sense though that in the discipline and the what word did we use earlier, that his experience and where he's coming from, where President Trump is now developed in his
political
his statesmanship.
His statesmanship. I think that, I'm hoping he's looking forward and not so much backwards.
But is this 3D chess from him
And
making them tip their hand and, oh, we're just going to give everybody this. And now he says, oh, well, now they're admitting something.
Well, so here's
now the judicial system. It's not that he's going after him. You've pardoned him. Let's challenge these pardons. And we're down that road of, it's not me. You pardoned somebody. We want to know, why did you pardon them?
Right. Well, it's my hope that's water under the bridge, and that the president is now looking forward. And I think that that's what I get out of this man now, is that he is looking forward. Yeah, he might want to go back and kick some ass and rub some people, some people who rubbed him the wrong way. I want to go back, but I'm also getting the sense that, he's almost like, what? I'm done with that. We are going to make this country different. We're going to go after the things I've talked about. We're going to straighten out the border. We're going to straighten out immigration. We're going to straighten out the economy. We're going to make our country the premier place to be. We're going to institute the space program. We are going to build our military. I mean, it's not, you look at social media or whatever. I mean, we see China and Russia and these countries that are building their military complexes, and our country is having difficulty putting a freaking carrier out to sea. So, and I think that's these people screwed me in the back, but you know what? I'm done with them.
No, I'm just putting a carrier out to sea is one of the most difficult engineering projects on the planet.
But
no,
I'm not saying that it isn't. But
that's
the flip
just me
side is
picking.
that,
other countries are doing it. That's the point.
They are doing it. Chris, the point I want to make, I agree with everything you just said as far as moving forward, going after the legitimacy of the pardons and attacking whether that they will hold up in court. I disagree with that. I think this goes to what Kavan just said, which is, what if they're guilty? I think a proper investigation conducted by Congress on this is the right course of action. I have heard the argument made that if you have a presidential pardon, you now have you waive your Fifth Amendment right.
I have seen that as well.
Is that true, Chris?
I honestly, I do not know the answer to that question.
If it is true, this is the argument I've heard made, was that the congressional investigation can haul all these people in front, under subpoena, in front of Congress. They can be forced to answer questions, and even though they have a presidential pardon, they can be held in contempt and jailed indefinitely until they decide
because
to play
they have
ball.
lost that Fifth Amendment right. Correct.
Yeah. So as far I was hoping
I have seen that as well.
Yeah. I think that's a more proper.
I am not a legal scholar.
I am not either.
I did sleep in my house last night, so it's not a Holiday Inn. But anyway, here's where I think we have a problem, and it's this: the foundation of our government. You're not going to convince me it's on the up and up. The foundation is rotten, in my opinion. When you start looking at, and maybe we're going to get this if he truly opens up the JFK files and all these things. But I mean, Joe Biden pardoned his entire family, his brothers, their wives, all of this. And now you're going, I maybe wonder why. Is it because of that rotten foundation? And if you build a house on a rotten foundation, we know what happens. So I'm with you, Chris. And look, you're not going to get every bad actor. Some of which you have to look at and go, you know what? We're going to let that slide, because we have to let that slide. But there are a couple, I firmly believe, when you start looking into Russiagate, and what went down with the FBI and the Hillary Clinton campaign, and how a governmental entity and the DOJ was used against another political candidate. We make fun of countries who do this stuff, yet it was so ingrained here. People need to be held accountable. And you're not going to get everybody. There's no way you get everybody, because we've got so many laws on the books that we all probably break a law every 5 seconds of every day. But if you get the ones that are the big contributors, those are the ones that can set up the future. Ritter, you got 2 seconds.
Do you make an example of somebody?
I absolutely believe you have to.
I think you don't go after anybody, like Chris said, but do you make a couple examples and say, we're rooting out evil? Here's your pink slip. You can leave without
Yep.
going to jail.
And you're the first one because we got to take a break. We'll be back. Hour 2 is always more fun on this week's episode of Implicit Bias and every other week. Don't miss Implicit Bias Radio. It is always more fun in Hour 2 of Implicit Bias Radio. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon, coming to you from the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast lair somewhere in downtown Lafayette, Louisiana. We got a great crew for you here in the Mr. Lester's TSPL this week. Sitting in the chair like mine, he is the consigliere, Chris Castro of Castro Law. At the bar, we have Lee Ritter, who we're still kind of working on his nickname. Nancy just doesn't quite fit. Sorry, Ritter, had to. And then, of course, there's Triple H, Hold Harmless Harmon. I know you don't like it, but it fits. It fits. It works.
I'm not going to argue anymore.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't have done you any good. He's from Dupree Carrier Godshaw, another great partner here on Implicit Bias Radio. We are sampling multiple weekly whiskeys. We are talking inauguration. We are talking mass. And when I mean mass pardons. It's like more pardons than every other president has ever issued combined. It's like over 7,500 pardons.
Multiple toe counts happening. You got to count on your toes.
Right.
Man, you got to count your toes. You got to count your wife's toes. You got to
cousin's
count your
toes.
kids, cousins. Yeah. Even those big Catholic families here in southern Louisiana are going outside the family.
Don't have enough toes.
No, not enough toes to count all of those. So before we get into our Mr. Lester's whiskeys for the month of January, let's go ahead and finish out this conversation around mass pardons inauguration, thoughts from the day, because as we're getting news in from this particular day, which by the way, this episode recorded just a couple of hours after the inauguration of the 47th president, thoughts from the group on what we're seeing and other things that are happening.
There's good stuff happening.
Be a little more general, if you will.
Well, I'm sorry. I kind of
That's
did.
like there's weather outside.
I went Sam on you for a minute.
Yeah,
I'm
you
so
did.
sorry.
Rest in peace. Yeah.
It feels good and it feels normal again. It feels good to have a president that can like speak a whole sentence and go from event to event and have vigor and energy, and somebody that I don't agree with everything this president says, but heck, he's out there and you feel like he could go toe-to-toe with Xi Jinping and Putin in the same room and walk out without a scratch, whereas the other guy might have come out on a gurney,
He probably went in on the
Oh,
gurney.
he probably went in, right? To me, it feels
It's sad, but it's true.
It feels like America again, and it feels like even when Obama was in a room, let's think about it. He could go toe to toe. He could
Yes.
dance. He could talk. It was good. Billy Bob could do the same thing. We had somebody that was representing the country, and we could at least as citizens be proud and say we may not agree with him, but we feel like they can hold down the sentence. They're not going to take a nap. We know it. They're them.
Right. I agree.
It seems like a return to normalcy is a big part of this conversation. Harmon?
Yeah, Billy Bob was George W. Bush. Is that who?
I was wondering who
Who's
he was
Billy
going
Bob?
after there.
That's who you dropped.
Our Arkansas president.
Okay,
Arkansas.
got you. Bill.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Now. Inauguration day, which I think was the question. Everything's going peacefully, which is what I was concerned about. I think a lot of people were really concerned about what's about to happen, and I still say maybe we're going to have a rough 2025. But as far as who's at the helm now, I'm going to sleep a little easier. That's my personal opinion. And everything I saw today, the speeches that we got to earlier, everything was. I liked everything that I heard. I do think he was sent there, and Trump knows he was sent there to do a particular job and get a few particular things done. And I like the focus. So far, so good.
There's a particular return to normalcy, and I love that call out, right? It just feels like the United States again. And it's not to say that we ever felt like we weren't, but there are certain logical things that we're like, we are living in some psychotic episode. And I don't mean like a psychotic episode like I mean like truly like a bad LSD trip. Not that I've ever had one, but it felt like we were, right? Things that we knew were supposed to be one way. Literally, you'd walk outside and you'd be like, that's a building. And somebody would say, no, that's a cat. And that actually got play. They're like, no, you can't say it's not a cat. No, it's a building. No, it's a cat. No, it's a building. Now you feel like it's a building again.
But don't you feel like too?
Twilight Zone
Yeah.
is what it was.
But
Yeah.
don't you feel like
and that's where I think that Biden was.
But don't you think
sadly for our country?
Yeah.
like Brian said though, he's got a mission, he's got a couple points. He's not running again. He's not going to run. So it's like He has 4 years. Let's get it done. He's not looking past that. He's looking to take care of business and make America something that he can be happy with when he leaves in 4 years and says, we got these things done. That's the way I feel.
So couple of things. Yeah, Brian, you go ahead and then I'll chime in.
I'm just saying, I think we're going to see a 2-year sprint. He's going to work on a 2-year time frame before the first midterm election. That's my opinion.
So one of the things that I found really funny, to me, it's an explanation of kind of what we meant by the Twilight Zone, like it feels like America again. You've got to love good old MSDNC. Rachel Maddow on the set tosses to a reporter who is at the border. Now, when we say things are happening quickly with this inauguration, within an hour or 2 hours of the inauguration being done, the El Paso border was locked down. Like there were already police in riot gear saying, if you are coming in, turn around and go back. I mean, that's how quick it happened. Why? Because automatically an emergency was declared at the border. Well, Rachel Maddow jumps on and says to the reporter who's there, does it feel like there's an emergency? And the guy says, no, it doesn't. Hold on a minute. It doesn't feel like there's an emergency because that's the way it's been for the last 4 years. And you think this is normal. That's not normal. Give it another 2 years. Let them lock it down and tell me if you think it feels different all of a sudden.
He just shut down the app. I mean, I'm just reading
the app is done.
It just shut down and everybody's freaking out. No, he just said, let's go back to normalcy.
So the border's one thing. The other big thing is I love the fact that we are talking about, do we really need an IRS that's pushing income tax in the United States? He has actually created an external revenue service, or he's announced that he's going to create one to go after all the countries that have been fleecing us and allowed to fleece us for decades. The simple fact that he is saying we are not going to roll over, close our eyes, and pretend like we like it in the middle of the night, that is a huge nod to the rest of the world that the free ride at the expense of the American taxpayer is over. It's done.
Yet Trump's the first president in our lives since World War II. The New World Order that came out of World War II was spearheaded by the United States, and I won't go into the particulars. It's above my pay grade.
There's a lot to it.
There's a lot to it, but that's the world. People our age,
yeah.
Everybody in this room has grown up in a world led by the United States. Our Navy alone has safeguarded free trade throughout the world. It's been the most safe time to send commerce overseas than it has ever been in written history, and it's because of the strength of the United States Navy.
We're paying the check for everything.
Yep. So, and Trump's the first one to stand up in our lifetime and say, we need to rewrite this playbook. This isn't working for the United States anymore, and I'm glad he's in the negotiating room and not someone else.
This is why.
I would just suggest to you, I don't know how much we want to rely on anybody else to pull that weight.
No, but I agree with you. But here's the deal. What he recognized, and this is why having a businessman in the White House is so important, because he recognizes, wait a minute, we are providing a service to the world. You know what happens when you provide a service? You get compensated for it. You don't pay to provide a service to everyone else. They pay you to provide the service. And it's been the absolute opposite of that forever, as far as we have known. Now, he's kind of drawn the line and said, look, you want our Navy to police this? Fine, we'll police it, but you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay at least your share of it, which is what he's told NATO. If you don't start contributing the right percentages of your national GDP, you're out. We're going to stop doing it. And you're on your own. And they know that if we become completely isolationist, it is a problem for all of these other countries.
Well, they got a pretty good education over the last 2.5 years about it. What did you see in Trump's first term? The mainstream media, every one of Trump's detractors, what were they saying about him attacking allies? Was the term that was used. He's completely vindicated in that, as far as our NATO allies not paying their fair share and the dangers of attaching. This is speaking specifically to Germany, attaching your entire economy to is it liquid? No, it's natural gas coming from the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Trump was screaming to the high heaven as to why that was a bad idea, and he was vilified for it. So again, the little halftime break of in between his two terms has turned out to be an absolute godsend. Instead of starting his second term without controlling, I think it was either both houses of Congress, if I'm not mistaken. Now he goes into his final 4 years, at least for the first half, controlling both houses.
Yeah.
So
He's got majorities in both houses.
yeah,
And even more important, he's got the Supreme Court.
that's correct.
The Supreme Court is checkmate.
Okay, yeah. So
Because the Supreme Court now, and look, whether you like Amy Coney Barrett or not, whether you like Gorsuch, the reality is they are strict constitutionalists, which means they've made Republicans unhappy, they've made Democrats unhappy, and basically what they've said is, this is what the Constitution says. You don't like it, change the Constitution.
So do we think he'll have another pick? He's got 4 years. I
he
mean,
may
what's
have-
the likelihood?
he-
Are we going
he
to
may have-
replace another
He
on the
may
right,
have,
or is
he
he
may
going to
have two. He may have two. He may have a right and a left.
Right.
So you
okay.
could be looking at a 7-2 constitutionalist split as opposed to a 6-3, 5-4, which you've got right now. I mean, it could be significant. And that's going to really lay a lot of things out as we kind of look forward to, not just because, to me, this is the comment was made to me about JD Vance today. Oh, if he plays his cards right, he'll be the next president. I said, no, Trump has to play his cards right for Vance to be the next president. That's what has to happen.
What happened after Grover Cleveland in his second go around? Who was the vice president and was he elected? I don't know. It's a good question. But this is going to be the only time in history that, or maybe the second time, where we have a vice president
Yes.
following a president who can't run again. Does he get elected or not? We'll look it up, I guess. But it's never going to happen. It's going to be an open primary essentially again.
Yeah.
And let's go.
Yep. Okay. So in hour two, we say it's always more fun. Why? It's because we've got more weekly whiskey. Now, the weekly whiskeys at the bar are what's available at Mr. Lester Steakhouse, the only 5-star restaurant between New Orleans and Houston, in the month of January on their whiskey special. Their whiskey special is this. Each pour is $15. If you want the flight, it's $30. So all three, the Forbidden Series from Bardstown, Bluestone Manor, and we have some people sampling in the room from those bottles. I have sampled those. You've heard my thoughts on all of them already here on the show. Let's start at the bar. Triple H, you just took a sip. Which one are you sampling, and what do you think?
This is Bardstown, right? Yeah.
Yep, it's out of
Bardstown.
Bardstown. It's called
Yep.
the Forbidden Series.
Forbidden Series. This is the single barrel. I'm enjoying it. I like it a lot. I'll be honest, it doesn't hold up to our first taste of the evening, but it's a different type of whiskey. And
It's
that's
very
why.
different,
Yeah,
yes.
it's very different. That's all. But for $30 for the flight, how many pours come with a flight?
3.
3.
So you
Okay.
get all 3 for $30.
Yeah, this is a steal.
Yeah, that's it. It's a steal. Again, it doesn't hold up to our first choice, but this is for a flight. If I'm having a flight for $30 with my meal.
Well, here's the really
this is
interesting
gonna be
thing.
great.
Have y'all ever seen those bottles on the shelf?
No, I haven't.
And there's the point.
And
right?
that is it. Yeah.
This
and
is about getting to experience something you haven't had before.
yeah.
And that, it's unobtainium.
No, it is unobtainium. The bottles are super unique. I mean, I have hundreds of bottles, and I don't have one like this.
Is that a not so subtle brag, Ritter?
No, I'm just.
yeah, it is. Yeah, don't.
We have a
lie.
lawyer here. I just want
Don't-
to point out facts.
Yeah,
okay.
Uh-huh.
I don't have this one.
I've seen it. It's ridiculous. He's telling the truth.
Thank you. Enough said. I rest.
A large wall.
Yeah. Oh no, he's got more than a large wall. Trust me. All right, Mr. Castro, what do you think of these particular offerings from Mr. Lester Steakhouse?
I'd say that they're quite tasty and can't beat it for the price.
So which one did you sample? Did you sample the single barrel as well?
I had that the blue.
Oh, so you had the Bluestone Manor.
I stuck with the blue.
Okay, so what'd you think of the Bluestone Manor?
Full body.
Okay. Lower on the proof, so a little easier to drink.
Yeah. Just rich in flavor. Just tasty and easy on the palate.
I like tasty and easy, so we're all good, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it was it's not something I've ever seen before. So
Again, unobtainium. And we're working on February. February might be the unobtainium of unobtainium at Mr. Lester Steakhouse. You just never know when that old blood temp is going to come in, and you're going to find a weekly whiskey that might just satisfy that. So we're going to do this. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We've got plenty more stories to discuss. A lot of them are fun. We're going to dive into the stories that you're not hearing anywhere else. We're going to solve the problems of the world. I guess we're on about our third weekly whiskey at a time, and continue to have more fun from the TSPL. This is Implicit Bias Radio. More of Hour 2 of Implicit Bias Radio is back on the air. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. And let me tell you, we are having more fun than I think legally we should be allowed to have. But then again, we do have a new administration, so maybe by executive order, it's legal here in the TSPL. That's the Top Secret Podcast Lair, presented by Mr. Lester Steakhouse. The crew here in the TSPL at the bar, we've got Lee Ritter of Ritter Consulting Engineers. We've got Brian Harmon of Dupree Carrier Godshaw. He is Hold Harmless Harmon, Triple H as we like to call him. And of course, in the chair like mine, he is Chris Castro of Castro Law, the consigliere here on Implicit Bias. Okay, so we actually talked in Hour 1 about the foundation of government and would Trump actually maybe prosecute or investigate? And one of the things I didn't get to say then that I really wanted to say now, please don't believe me. Please go look up past episodes of the show when Trump was under investigation, because there was something that I always said, and I will continue to say it. When they investigated Trump, what we said was investigate him. If we really truly believe that there is someone breaking the law, they should be investigated. But that needs to be held not just for the goose, but for the gander as well. Which means that if you're going to investigate him for everything, you got to investigate everyone else for Erytang. And I don't mean like everything, like Everyt. I mean like Erytang, like Errytang, Erytang. You got to investigate them all. Here's potentially why. So there's multiple posts of this on X, and you can find it from multiple handles. There's one that I actually saw, and I love the name of this. This particular X handle is Thrilla the Gorilla, which I find hysterical, but it's certified with a blue check mark, which means they actually paid for it. So that's all that matters. Right. Not that it means anything, but they paid for it. But this is the post. And this is why I say, what if they did it? What if they were actually guilty? So when we say that they're all connected and that the foundation might be rotten to the core, here's where we start. And we're going to play, call it 6 degrees of Jeffrey Epstein.
All right.
Not 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of Jeffrey Epstein. And we're going to start with Anthony Blinken, who for a while was the U.S. Secretary of State. Blinken's stepfather is a guy by the name of Samuel Pisar, P-I-S-A-R, Pisar, however he pronounces it. I'm not trying to butcher your name. I just don't care. Who was a lawyer and confidant of a guy by the name of Robert Maxwell. Now, Robert Maxwell, everybody probably knows the last name of Maxwell. What people don't know is that Maxwell was a publisher and also a well-known agent of the Mossad. So we're what? 1 degree, 2 degrees. Maxwell's last name was given to his now unmarried daughter, who still carries said last name, whose first name is Ghislaine. Now we should be starting to get familiar. So we're 1, 2, 3 degrees away. Who did Ghislaine Maxwell work for? Who was she the handler for? Our favorite person who did not kill himself, Jeffrey Epstein. I have 6 degrees of Jeffrey Epstein because I connected it in 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees. 4 degrees from Jeffrey Epstein. Now, here's the really crazy part. There are R's and there are D's who are all less than 4 degrees away. And that's the big point. That's why figure out who it is and start over.
We just need to see the list.
I agree.
We just need to see the list. They haven't. She's still alive.
As far as we know.
She hasn't offed herself. We need to see a public confirmation of that, and we need to see the list. Let's see the truth. That's all I ask for. Let's just see the truth. Where are we at? Like, that's it. Let's go. Let's just see it.
I am completely on board from this perspective. There are allegations because there are pictures. There are allegations of, but there are pictures of Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein.
That's fine. He's also on the manifest a couple times.
P. Diddy.
Now,
Let's go.
we're going to get to P. Diddy in a minute. Here's the interesting part. The part of the manifest that Trump is on is not to the island.
Exactly.
He is on, but I want to see it. We need to know, right? We need to confirm this because that's what we've been told. And you know what? I don't have the manifest in my dirty, grubby, greedy little fingers. All I have is what we can sort out. So give us the transparency we ask for. That's all I ask. Because guess what? If he's guilty, we need to know. And I want to know. I'd be willing to bet that every member of the TSPL, even though you might look at this guy and go, that's the guy that I wanted there. If he's guilty, I want to know. And guess what? If he's guilty, he needs to be held accountable. Doesn't matter who he is.
I can't disagree with that. There's no question that you criminal. You violate the law. Then
What's the standards we live at as a citizen?
Yeah.
Are they above the law or are they a citizen?
That's it.
Right?
A citizen? A citizen? Yeah. No, look, I agree with you 100%.
Right.
If you don't have standards, you have nothing. Because if it's good for everyone, what's the saying? When everyone is special, no one is special.
No man's above the law. Correct.
No man, regardless of what position you hold, should be above the law. I liken it to this. And look, as we often say on this show, we are trying to be Catholic and Christian. We try every day.
Absolutely.
The only one who succeeded every single day left this planet about 2,000 years ago, a little more than that. And when he comes back is anybody's best guess. But to that point, if you look at the institution he left behind, it is now made up of imperfect human beings. That is what any church is. Any religion is made up of imperfect human beings, which means you got issues because we're freaking messy and we're a terrible species if you look at us from the 30,000-foot view. We are. We are ant farms that cannot quit trying to take over other ant farms. That's what we are. And we are willing to do terrible things to the other ant farms to get there. If the church is like that, then how bad do you think government is?
Impossible to know. It's got to run deep.
There's no doubt it runs deep. But to that point, the only way we get to as close to, I think, what we're all looking for, because I don't think anybody expects perfection. I don't.
Strive for it.
You strive for it and you try to get as close as you can. But we are so far away from what we could actually achieve. It's not even funny. I mean, we are so past the 2019 LSU Tigers. We're the Ed Ogeron end of his career as far as government is concerned in how bad.
Give him the check and he'll leave.
Yeah. Which almost makes me wonder if some people got some checks to leave.
He shouldn't have got that check.
No,
But anyway.
that was the deal that we made. And that was a deal made with the devil, no doubt. You said it. From your lips to God's words, right? We made that deal with the devil. You got the 2019 LSU Tigers, which, okay, quick rabbit hole. If you are trying to compare any college team to the 2019 LSU Tigers, there are carrots with higher IQs than you. It's just that simple. If you honestly think that there is any other team that has beaten the number of teams that LSU did to go undefeated, the ranking of teams that LSU defeated to go undefeated, by the disparity in margin of victory that LSU did, zip it, zippy long stockings, shut up, and you're done. Just go in the corner, enjoy the carrot paste that you are putting all over your face instead of eating, because that's the IQ level that you sit at. Okay, out of that rabbit hole, back to kind of where we were with regards to just kind of how we ended up here. Is anybody surprised by how, for lack of a better term, and it's actually, I think it's a great term, I don't think it's lack of a better, how inbred our government is?
Oh, man. It's a dirty little family.
It's a silo, and it goes straight up, and it's super narrow. And if you get lucky enough to get an entry level ticket in politics, and you go so far, you only go to so many floors, and then you have to go to another level, and it needs to be knocked down.
You get to the lingerie floor, and they figure out who wants to step out and get on that floor and work that floor for a little while, and then get back on the elevator so they can go back up, as opposed to people like, I'm gonna stay on the elevator back to the bottom. That's the difference.
I think the dirty little secret in Washington is for the last, my entire life, 40, 50 years, probably longer. The boys club in Washington, D.C. has been, they are laundering our taxpayer money in the form of foreign aid, which is leaving our borders, crossing the planet, coming back into the country, to a bunch of LLCs owned by all of the distant relatives or friends of these
foundations.
Foundations. There we go.
Foundations.
That's right. And Trump was a big threat to upending that apple cart, and I'm hoping we see something come of that this current term. I think that's a pie in the sky, but I don't know. But and one of the greatest disappointments of becoming an adult is realizing our government's been lying to us a long time.
You know who's not lying to you?
You're so right.
Implicit Bias Radio. Why? Because we know that we've got 2 more segments left in hour 2, and we do also have to take a break. So we'll come back. The penultimate segment of this week's episode of Implicit Bias Radio is right after this. Aggravated on this week's episode of Implicit Bias Radio. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. We've got a great crew for you here in the Mr. Lester's TSPL, the top secret podcast lair for the uninitiated. And yes, I'm aggravated. I'm upset. I've got angst. I've got a conundrum that I have to sort through. What are you laughing at, Ritter? No, I am peeved. I am ticked off. I am disgruntled. Why? I'm disgruntled with you, Steak and Shake. Steak and Shake, you and I have a problem. Or maybe we need to rephrase that. We have a problem. Not a problem. We got a problem. We got a problem. We got a beef. Yeah, we got issues, right? And what is it? It's that we don't have one here in Lafayette, Louisiana anymore. Let me tell you why, and let me introduce you to the crew as we do this. Steak and Shake is the first, and I don't want to say major, because they're a big chain. Across the country, they are a big chain. But they have announced something that, it's tasty. Something that is just really getting underneath my palate. And it's this. They are going to fry their fries in beef tallow. Every store by the end of 2025. And that just hits on so many levels. Let's go to the crew here in the TSPL at the bar. What are you laughing about, Harmon? You got that eating grin on your face.
We're talking beef tallow and Steak and Shake. I'm just smiling. I'm a fat kid at heart. I don't know what you want from me.
Hey, you can't say that unless your pronouns are fat kid. Is that what your pronouns are?
I don't want to discuss my pronouns. It's 2025. This is 47 era.
Yeah. Okay.
With the inauguration, we're back to 2 pronouns.
Correct.
So
there you go. All right. Well,
tightening it up here.
4, but it's 2 sets. Yes, I agree. Absolutely. Okay. So but why are you happy now that we are talking about Steak and Shake and beef tallow?
It's beef tallow and Steak and Shake. I shouldn't have to clarify. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have eaten at a lot of Steak and Shakes. St. Louis, Missouri is where I've had them. I spent a lot of time up there, and that was one of the places I always asked to go to when we were there. Full disclosure, I didn't read our homework. I don't know exactly where this is going. But
Shocker.
You only had 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Well,
but I usually do my homework, and this has to be a good thing. I mean, it's beef tallow, so. Isn't it pretty expensive? I mean, it seems like that wouldn't be very cost effective. But
okay.
Is this because of health issues?
So hold on. Anybody have any insight to this other than me?
The only thing I can say is that beef tallow, frying your fries in beef tallow will add a ton of flavor to, and it's the original, not say originally necessarily,
No, it is.
Well, it certainly goes back to utilizing animal fat for purposes of frying the, whatever you're going to fry.
So-
In this instance, is potatoes.
So let's start
So-
here. Let's start here,
Whether
right?
it's pig fat,
Yeah.
beef fat.
Yes.
But-
Ring the bell because he went right where I was going.
He went crackling.
All of our grandparents, we know this.
Lard.
My grandmother lived to 94 years old.
Right.
She was a viable person. And I mean, like, she was vibrant until probably 92, 93 years old.
Yeah.
She was there.
Mhm.
That woman had a jar on her stove.
Yes.
She had a jar, and you knew what was in that jar, and everything that was good and fried started with that jar. And what was in that jar? Say it again, Chris.
Bacon grease.
It was bacon fat. That's what it was. It was pig tallow,
Mm-hmm. All right.
rendered, cooled, put on the stove, and that's what everybody used.
Yeah.
You cooked in stuff that either walked, ran, swam, flew, or grew straight out of the ground.
Right.
Not motor oil left over from World War II that they convinced the American public was edible.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I say go back to the beginning for this particular reason, and here's why. McDonald's used to fry their French fries in beef tallow and then went away from it. Yes, so I love our friends at McDonald's. Fry your fries back in beef tallow. And you say you think it's expensive. It's waste. Right now, what are they doing with that fat? They're putting it in animal food. They're putting it in dog food, cat food, right? They're doing all this different stuff where they're trying to go all these different ways as opposed to just turning it into grease that you can fry with. Let me tell you, you want to stay all natural. So where are my eco warriors out there? Where are my people who are saying, hey, American natives used every part of the animal. Let's use every part of the animal. Render the fat, use it and fry in it. It's that simple.
No waste.
No waste. And Chris, you said the big part of this. When you fry in tallow, what do you get?
Flavor.
No, you got to say it right. You get, go ahead, come on.
Flavor.
You're from New Orleans. You get flavor.
Yeah,
Right?
baby.
I mean, I'm waiting on somebody with the clock to jump in and go, yeah, boy. Like flavor, you get flavor like Flavor Flav.
Right.
What, Ritter?
You just keep looking at me and I'm just nodding along. What do you want? You want an affirmation here?
Dude, have you never had anything fried in tallow?
Dude, I grew up on 80s McDonald's fries and beef tallow, man.
Right.
I know. This is good stuff.
Now, I'll be honest. I don't know when the switch happened. I don't know if it was late 70s, early 80s. I don't know if it was mid to late 80s.
We used to go to mass in the morning.
Yeah.
Sunday morning, and we would go to the McDonald's on Johnson Street across from Service Merchandise, a couple families, and it was just, we'd go eat. We'd eat burgers and fries with the ashtray out of the way.
Look, now I'm also going to go back to, I remember when portion sizes, I remember when a large drink was what is considered a medium drink now. I remember when a Big Mac was a Big Mac for a reason.
Has anybody poured the small into the medium to the large cup? Have anybody seen that?
Oh,
meme?
yeah.
I mean, has anybody tried that?
Well,
I know we're sidebar.
it's an ice ratio.
is,
That's
is
all
that,
it
is
is.
that all it is? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering. Has anybody tried that?
No, I know what video you're referring to. That's trick cups.
That's what I
not.
thought.
Yeah, that you get more fluid in a large cup at any fast food restaurant than you do in a medium. You get more in a medium than you do in a
I mean,
small.
I count on my toes, so I know how many
Okay,
ounces there
so
should be.
so hold on.
But I
So
do know what you refer.
So Harmon, having worked for one of those drink companies, what I will tell you is this. So first of all, there is a recommended ice to liquid ratio. And actually, pro tip, if you go to a convenience store and you look inside the cup, there's usually a line there or a break or something like that. That's where your ice is supposed to be in order to get the right ice to liquid ratio. But I guarantee you that if you go to 99% of fast food restaurants and you look at the amount of ice they're putting in those cups, the ice is almost to the top, which means that you have more ice to liquid than you should have in any particular cup. That being said, I have a brother. I've got two brothers. I love my brothers. I'm the youngest of 3, for those who don't know. I'm 11 years behind my closest sibling. So, like, yeah, I was surprised. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was an oops. And trust me, ask my wife, I'm oops in a hell of a lot more than just that. Anyway, my oldest brother, love him to death. Cheap as all hell. And I will never forget. And I'm going back to, so let's see, I was probably 7 to 10, so 80 to 83, 80 to 82. We go to a McDonald's and he would order a small Coke with no ice to get him to fill it up to the top. And then get a large cup with ice. Now, back then, they didn't charge you for the cup. They didn't charge you for the ice. We would fill that large cup twice with the fluid that just filled up a small cup to the brim, no ice. That tells you how much of a ratio is offset. In other words, you always want easy ice.
Yeah.
You always want easy or light ice.
In college, I would go to the Burger King by USL's campus, and order a drink with no ice because the machines were cooled, and so your drink was already cold.
Right.
Okay, so I'm just going to give you a heads up here, Ritter.
Just saying.
The machines are always cooled.
Yep.
Because in order to dispense carbonated water with that in it, well, you just said it like the machines were cooled, like it was like it's unique.
I'm breaking
not-
breaking news for the younger folk.
Well, there you go. Yes, because the younger folk out there have no idea that the actual drink that comes out is cold already.
Yes.
It doesn't need ice to be cold.
Well,
That's just the way it works.
to the direct question of the tallow.
Yes, to
and
go back to
steak
tallow.
and
Anyway.
steak and shake.
What were we talking about?
So you learned about this by checking some social media. I mean, are they coming
announced
back? Are they bringing us back?
Yeah,
like now?
they have announced it. They are starting, and they have said by the end of the year, 2025, every restaurant they have, every Steak and Shake, will be frying everything in tallow, which means that not only are they cooking with gas,
Right.
they're cooking with fat. And that is all about Implicit Bias Radio.
Drill, baby, drill. Is that what's happening? We're gonna get gas in this?
Ritter, we're trying to go to a break.
I know.
Read the room. We are flying on this week's episode of Implicit Bias. Almost 2 hours has just flown by as we solve the problems of the world, one weekly whiskey or 3 or 4 or 5 at a time. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. We're having too much fun in the Mr. Lester's Top Secret Podcast lair. And in this final episode, we are here to make fun of people. That's just what we're going to do. And yes, yeah, hopefully we're not making fun of you. And if we are making fun of you, hopefully you figure it out. So let me introduce you to the crew real quick. Chris Castro, the consigliere of Castro Law, sitting in the chair like mine here in the TSPL. At the bar, Lee Ritter and Triple H, Brian Harmon, Hold Harmless Harmon of Dupree Carrier Godshaw, Lee Ritter of Ritter Consulting Engineers. We have gone down the path of government corruption. We've gone down the path of beef tallow and cooking French fries the best way possible. We have gone down the route of multiple weekly whiskeys, the presidential dram, and now...
And the inauguration.
Yeah, the inauguration, of course. But now it's time for us to put our foot, as The Rock would say,
Spit it out. Let's go.
in the Rudy Poo candy ass of those who are gonna fight over Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
Did y'all see this story? I mean, I sent this over. I know there wasn't a ton of time this week.
I'm watching it on X right now. It looks ridiculous.
Okay, so first of all,
Impossible.
No, it's not impossible.
not
And it's not
impossible.
improbable.
No,
It happened.
it-
Somebody filmed it.
it happened. So first of all, I feel like if you're going to Costco, you're Will Ferrell in Old School. When the guy catches him at the party, he's like, "Man, what do you got going this weekend?" "Oh, the wife and I, yeah, we're gonna go like Bed Bath. We're got a crazy weekend plan. We're gonna go Bed Bath and Beyond. We're gonna go Costco, right?" It's like, dude, you're going to Costco. I love Costco. Don't get me wrong. Costco.
You're married with 2 kids.
Yeah, well, if you go to the meat department at Costco, you can get great whole roast. You can do all kinds of fun stuff with
great for a
with
married
what's
couple.
provided there, right? You can get seafood there. I mean, there's you can get stuff to work on the house. There's all kinds of cool stuff there.
That all true. But when it comes down to this topic, who thinks Costco's getting the golden ticket? Okay, let's just who's getting
this is
the
also
gold?
fair.
I mean, who really believes Costco, who
Okay.
buys in bulk, is going to get multiple of these
All right.
golden ticket things?
Well, so hold on. Costco's liquor department
legit.
is one of the greatest liquor departments in all of the United States. They sell more liquor than any other single retailer in the United States.
Yeah.
They get great stuff
Sure enough,
at great prices.
a lot of run of the mill stuff goes out the door,
They also
and a lot of OE gets sold in certain supermarkets
it does
because of the clientele.
it
right?
does.
So the clientele that goes there buys a lot of certain kind of liquor.
They do.
But so just because you're moving volume doesn't mean you're getting golden tickets.
With
Here-
all of that, let me just ask. So, Kavan, lay out for us what happened,
What
at
happened?
Costco.
Okay, so here's what happened at the Costco. Costco got all these packs of Pokemon cards. And it's like their own special pack that you can only get at Costco, which is the way that they do business, right? Businesses make special packages and special offerings for Costco. Well, they get Pokemon. And I get it. I had kids. My son, when he was 12, played Pokemon. He's not 32 years old trying to fight the other dude who lives in his mom's basement at 32 years old for some freaking pack of Pokemon in the middle of freaking Costco. I'm just saying.
Who
Is that what
used his
happened?
Who used his mom's card to get in?
Yeah, probably used his parents' card to get in.
Is that what happened, though?
That's what happened. I mean, what else happened?
I'm just asking.
No, what else happened?
So as we saw the video there, we see two adult males probably.
Okay, hold on.
easily in their-
Whoa. Don't assume that they're males.
True. We see
They're
two
fighting over
before
Pokemon
today.
cards.
And I say adult, and I use that word
Yeah.
loosely as far as we see two mature individuals, maybe men, but going at it, head lock on one and other with, thinking he's carrying the football to the end zone for the Super Bowl, and our guy is trying to tackle him for the freaking for the box of cards,
And here's how you know.
and the Costco guy just walking by like he really doesn't care.
Like he's seen it every Saturday morning. Here we go again.
Like he works at a Waffle House.
He looked like a subway police officer in New York City with someone on fire.
And
Oh yeah.
oh, that's funny, but it's sad because
Right.
it's true.
But
Why you gotta bring us down?
Hey,
But-
All right, back to the funny.
but true,
what
though.
I
Terrible.
wanted to see was the Nolan Ryan just uppercuts to the head. I mean, notice there is zero killer instinct at all. None. If you're gonna get into this fight,
it's true.
get into the fight. Don't fight like you're fighting your sister, which is what it looked like. Like, oh, I don't want to hurt my sister. I'm not. No, dude, this guy is fighting you over a bunch of freaking Pokemon cards. They're playing cards, right? If you want to fight me over a package in Costco, and this is the difference, this is why they say, and this is why specifically that generation says, don't mess with Gen X. If that had been a Gen Xer who was trying to get that for his kids, what would have happened to that 32-year-old?
He'd have been pretzeled.
Oh, he'd have been pretzeled. He'd have been flayed from his nya all the way up to his neck.
We don't know if it's a him.
Yeah,
them.
well, doesn't matter what it is.
Hey.
Yeah, he'd have been flayed, right? I mean, skinned alive by a Gen Xer because it's like, you want to start this fight?
I don't know if that fight would have even occurred.
Probably
He
not.
probably looked at him and been like, "These cards are mine."
Yeah. Actually, he probably would have looked at him and it would have been the Hancock. He'd have leaned in and said, "You fellas really sure you want to ride this train?" Because that's what it would have been. That's where it would have gone, right? I'm going to take your head and I'm going to shove it up his if y'all want to do this. And that's where Gen X would have taken this. That's the crazy part about this. It's not even a real fight. This looked like, and I don't want to say the WWE, I'm trying to think of a fight that was rigged. This looked like the Tyson-Jake Paul fight, where they're like, we're going to make you think we're fighting, but we're not
You
really
mean
fighting.
the 2020 election?
Yeah, fraudulent from the get-go,
There we go.
right? But that's my whole point is this whole thing was like, what are you doing? What is so important in your life that you think a Pokemon card is worth some sort of physical altercation? Because trust me, the guy who's seen and understands violence, the guy, and I'm not saying I'm that guy. We've had these guys on this show. You don't pick a fight with that guy over a Pokemon card, because he will make sure that a feeding tube and a colostomy bag are needed for the remainder of your natural existence.
At minimum.
Yeah, Adam, Ritter, this is an audible medium, Ritter. That means you have
At minimum. Well, it's over on Brian, and Brian's just tapping his pen. And
come on,
laughing.
Brian. Yeah, Brian.
He's just giggling, and it's like, get in on the conversation or pass the mic.
I can't discuss Pokemons. I don't care.
Me either.
What do y'all want from me?
I'm discussing the generation that beats Pokemon.
It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, look, we collected baseball cards as kids. Our generation was baseball cards and then some football cards. How many fights did you see over baseball cards as a kid? I mean, you might have had an individual fight here or there. Never in the store. Never in the store. Why? Because first, the store owner would have beat the hell out of you and kicked you out.
And the gum was terrible, so nobody
Oh,
wanted
God, the gum was horrific. And then if your parents found out you did it,
No more cards for you.
yeah, oh, no more cards? You would. What's the saying? My father said it, and I know everyone in this room, except for maybe Tug, I don't know how old Tug is, maybe his father said it, which is, I made you. I'll kill you and make another one just like you and enjoy doing it.
Yep.
That's the saying. That's where it went. That's why maybe we got alleged dudes fighting over Pokemon cards.
Well, I don't know. I guess Pokemon, it seems to me, is probably a Chinese creation. I'm not
Japanese.
Sure. Oh,
Japanese.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
it's Japanese, no doubt.
I mean, something we need to put a big tariff on.
You know what? If they're going to try and bring that through the American Canal into the Gulf of America, absolutely. And cheers that. Yeah, I'm glad you rang the bell. That was well played, Mr. Castro. The consigliere coming in big. Oh, look, it's been too much fun on this week's episode.
Our world is coming to an unusual location when we're worried about freaking fighting over Pokemon cards. I mean, if they're fighting over a piece of steak or, I don't know what, maybe some bourbon or I don't know. But,
No.
But you know what we're not fighting over?
The food rights would have come in the second Biden
Yep.
turn.
We're not, the one thing we're not fighting over is more implicit bias. We got to wrap up this episode. Tug is telling me that we are done for this particular week. So you know what? If you have seen us on socials, if you've seen us on podcast, find us, like, subscribe, X, YouTube, Insta, Facebook. And guess what? You can find all our past episodes. And if not, we'll see you in 7 on Implicit Bias Radio.